Well, welcome to the latest episode of the Art of NVC podcast. Today's very special. We have two guests, and they are some NVC entrepreneurs and adventurers pushing the limits on what's possible. It's very exciting and very interesting. And why don't you introduce yourselves? Let's start with Benson.
Hi, I've been practicing nonviolent communication since 2020, and then I have, um, yeah, I was first introduced to it when my communication coach at the time helped me to collect some arrears, some rent that wasn't paid from a tenant, and yeah, I was so surprised that with just some powerful languaging, I could uh, I could collect my arrears as well as build connection with my tenant. And then I was then hooked. And then I have joined hundreds of hours of NVC training and helping other people and mediation and coaching and teaching the foundation course, co-teaching the foundation course and many things. And
Awesome.
then, yeah, thank you. And I've really enjoyed the Art of NVC podcast. It was one of my favorite podcasts kind of a year or so ago when it was very active. And I look forward to more episodes coming soon. And my latest mission, calling is to teach NVC at scale and to empower people around the world to NVC at scale. And I was looking to do a PhD combining NVC and artificial intelligence. And then I found Anne Sue at Queen Mary University. So I think this can be quite a nice segue.
All right. And
Um, so I'm associate professor at Queen Mary University of London, and my research combines machine learning and artificial intelligence with behavior change and motivational psychology and well-being psychology. And so that was my background. And then about 4 years ago, a friend of mine introduced me to nonviolent communication, a therapist friend. And I was just so struck by how beautiful the framework was, how elegant the teaching of Marshall Rosenberg is, and how essential is this just simply by changing the language that we choose to use, we're reframing our entire attitudes to being something so much more generous and in contact with what's important and essential in these human relationships and also in ourselves. And I was just so inspired by how beautiful it was. And it's always been one of my main aims is to use technology and my computational background to scale this understanding of self and others and to encourage people to practice a more uh, enlivened and compassionate way of relating to each other. And so when I came across nonviolent communication, I was like, this is perfect because it's taught so clearly and there are so many just very simple clear steps to it. It's just something really perfect for a artificial intelligence that it can assist us. I mean, I'm not someone who thinks of AI as really anything that would replace humans at all, but I do think it's a great enabler to allow us to be more human, to allow us to, help with our faulty memories, help with our, faulty ability to access things in the right moment and just really help us practice. It's really an opportunity to give everyone the real-time feedback that we often need or real-time support in a way that we need to learn a whole new way of communicating and to find that uh, useful and generous frame and the values-based frame in difficult situations. I think it's very hard in the heat of the moment to find that space and to have something that can help us and help nudge us towards that is what I was always envisioning wanting to be able to do, like looking at different ways to create like coaches and automatic coaches to help support people. And yeah, so when I found NVC, it was like it just seemed like the perfect thing. I was like, oh, I know how to build this. It's perfect.
so you're doing the programming for this, or you
I
were?
did, yeah. So up to now, yeah, it was been my from my research lab, and I did most of the programming. Yeah.
Wow. So I've been playing around with it. So let's explain to the audience how is it how does it work? The
Yeah, so it takes in text. It takes in text by typing. You can use your voice dictation, but it takes in text, and I'll analyze the language and notice anything that could be phrased more effectively. So specifically, it catches um, things that are not objective, so things that are not observations. If you're making judgments, if you're using subjective negative language on people or people's actions, if you're assessing causality to anything that's negative and subjective, it's alerting you to that. So I'm directing this toward the workplace context. In the workplace context, I think they do need to be able to say certain things are negative because, you can have a project and it goes wrong. And so in some ways, the strictness of NVC that's applied to mediation and conflict resolution situations needs to be adjusted depending on if you're talking about a project going wrong versus, a person being wrong. So, right. So I actually have it detect whether it's a person's actions, or actually like a objective thing that's being described.
Mhm.
I also, it notices whether you're talking about emotions and whether the emotions are being linked to universal values. And if you only talk about emotions, it gives you a nudge saying like it's more effective if you link your emotional response to the underlying values. So it also gives you, there is AI out there. I mean, there's so much AI out there, but especially mostly they capture the overall tone of your email. So if you use like Grammarly or Watson, they'll tell you how friendly you're being or if you seem angry and things like this. But the purpose of what I built was that it actually gives very psychologically targeted feedback, so that you're actually learning in a human psychological way to understand what could be more helpful in your language.
Beautiful. And so how long have you been working specifically on the NVC aspects of it?
It's been MVC from the start, so
Oh, okay.
uh, almost almost 4 years, 3.5 to 4 years, basically. I've been like slowly building this. Yeah.
Okay. And now what stage is it in right now?
So we've done some pilots. I've had some initial company pilots, and we're basically looking to roll it out more widely, which is why we're getting Benson on board and hopefully one more co-founder on board. And yeah, to take it more commercially, because commercialization isn't my strength. I don't really love sales and
You can't
marketing.
do everything? No.
Yeah, I actually watched a lot of videos. Every time I hope that I can do sales and marketing, and every time it comes to it, I just like, it's not my thing.
So, okay, so and where do you see its use? Like, are you trying to market to companies, or do you want people to use it, or both, or do you have different versions for different people or different situations?
We don't have different versions at the moment, but we definitely the end point is to have it used in companies. However, absolutely having individual users and user feedback is essential, especially at this stage. It's very common for even B2B, business to business products start with getting consumer feedback and just understanding exactly the context that individual people find it useful. So individual feedback for anyone out there who might be interested in trying it would be really, really appreciated. And any thoughts on, where in your life, I mean, we're directing it toward work, but even if more generally you had people had thoughts on where they could find it useful.
Okay. And like where do you see it going? Like, is it so right now it tells you when you're off. Is it in the future it'll give you alternatives, or yeah?
Yeah, so I think definitely I have it structured. The way I've built it is that it's very easy to expand it, or it's readily expanded so that it will give you alternatives, which you can then
Okay.
nuance and phrase for your individual situation. I think that's what people want. People don't want, of course, just to do exactly what, they
No,
don't want to take verbatim what's said. But
no.
then when I give workshops, like all people are doing is like screenshotting my examples, as you probably well know when you give your training, that people really are like writing down like, oh, I really want that phrase. So I do see that as a, a valuable thing that the next versions
And
will
what's the
bring.
difference between AI and just like it being a database that just recognizes, oh, you're saying this and this? How is that different than AI?
Yeah, so a database is a perfectly valid, like simple basis for an AI. So I guess when you say database, what I imagine is it looks up something, and it like matches it to the closest cluster of, possible responses, and then it outputs something,
Hmm.
right? And so an AI literally is something that takes it something, does some computational processing to match it to the closest suitable like range of outputs. And so in that input and then doing some computational to find the space, if you like, of responses that's most relevant, and then outputting it, it is like a more sophisticated version of this like database response that you talk about. It's
Hmm.
just able to capture a lot more nuances because language is complicated and
Hmm.
there's lots of different ways things are said, and so it's just a structure that adapts flexibly to the complexity of our language.
Okay, so it's just more powerful and more nuanced, and it can adapt to more different. Yeah, because I can imagine like people are writing things all kinds of different ways. Sometimes it's like not even the correct grammar, but it'll still be able to kind of suss out what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And this is I mean, these are lots of like kind of like big problems in natural language is like, how do you know there's even a very simple sentence. It's like the dog that ran over the cat was hungry. I don't know, it's not a great example, but there are lots and lots of sentences where it's very unclear what's referring to what,
Mhm.
and you only know because of how people tend to use it and how patterns are tend to use it. And
Uh-huh.
so lately, I mean, maybe many people in the audience will have known about GPT chat and all the big AI models that have come out most recently that have very, very astonishing levels of like human like language understanding power. And so the idea is to build upon the frameworks that I've already created, but then leverage these new technologies that really allow us to understand language even more flexibly, and and able to understand, uh, able to learn new language patterns more easily, and to use this framework on top of while leveraging those models as well, so to integrate those.
Wow. And so Benson, you're looking to be involved in this as well?
Yes, I've been working as in technology in the financial sector for the last 14 years. So I've kind of quite a lot of technology background. And so yeah, I would. But then now my biggest passion for the last few years is NVC, and I want to integrate those two. And then so I want to work with Anne to enable this tool to be available to the masses, and also I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss and other entrepreneurs, authors. So it's now a wonderful opportunity to combine my interest in technology, mathematics, linguistics. That's what I've done some formal training at university as well, and now nonviolent communication. I think this is a perfect uh, um, marriage, but marriage of like five things. Yeah, some kind of perfect.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Sounds
Perfect
like you're
marriage of
uniquely
five interests. Some kind of yeah, uh, um, wonderful marriage. I think I'll edit this out when I'm talking about. Excuse me. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm curious too about so can you tell us a story of when you first used it? Like what did you say to your tenant? What was that situation? How did that go down? The first time you used NVC on your tenant and you collected your arrears?
Yeah, just I don't remember the exact text and the language, and because it was in French as well, so there was various level of translation, and the essence um, was to avoid any judgmental language at all costs, avoiding should, well, and the equivalent in French, and then just to really understand the what was behind the late payment and the arrears.
Mm.
And then after that, I've done many role plays with my coach at the time, and then to role play how to have the conversation with him. And then yeah, after various conversation with the tenant at the time, then yeah, we kind of arrive at a slow repayment, and then it was paid off at the end. So I was very glad about that.
Amazing. That's perfect.
So yeah, NVC for that collection is quite niche, but maybe it's a new it's still niche.
And then Anne, how did you first come across NVC? Someone showed it to you, or did you have a
Yeah, a
situation?
psychologist friend told me about nonviolent communication and gave me the book.
Because you were already into behavior
Yeah, I was in behavior change and
Behavior change.
psychology. I've been doing I was neuroscience and physics was my PhD, so I was doing cognitive science, neuroscience, behavior change. So always into psychology research. Yeah.
Okay. And then you saw that and it really resonated, and then you did the deep dive into it.
Yeah, because I've been looking into how AI can be used to help with psychology and our personal psychology. So, there's theoretical psychology and there's just everyday life, what improves life and helps us be the best, our best self. And I would even done a startup on a behavior change startup where we are doing personalized recommendations for behavior change. I'd done lots of proposals for work where it's like, you remember your best like self in the past and then you use those memories, the AI will remind you those memories, all these things. I had so many projects and ideas of how AI can
Wow.
be used to help us, nudge us towards making, values-based choices and values-based actions. So I was looking for it for a long time, the ability to combine AI with just behavior change and better living. And yeah, so when I found NVC, it was just like, oh, this is the thing. This is finally the thing that will go together perfectly.
Amazing. And now, do you find yourself using it much, or is it kind of you did? Personally, I have noticed I use it a little bit, but a lot of times I just don't say judgments. Like judgments have kind of like gone out of my vocabulary. That avoids a lot of problems.
Yeah, I know it goes so long way. It goes such a long way. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So true, so true. I use it a lot when helping my friends and also doing coaching. It's uh
Yeah.
it's just, helping them frame their aspirations and helping people feel heard.
Mhm.
Um yeah, so it's kind of there in the background, kind of underlying lots of things. I'm very lucky I don't have a lot of conflict in my life, fortunately.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and I also got mediation trained. So I'm like a workplace mediator. But I just even from all that training, they did mention Marshall Rosenberg and NVC in the training. NVC is just so clean. It's so,
Isn't it? Yes.
I've read all the workplace books and communication books and conversation books, and they're good, not talking down on those books, but I just feel like Marshall Rosenberg's book and the teachings are just so clear and essential and just capture it all. It's just in such a simple, elegant framework.
Yeah, to me, I love it too. They're so simple and clear and profound that it's like spiritual, but it's not
Yeah.
like spiritual with this dogma. It's just like these are just principles that are so foundational to
Yeah.
human interaction without any real extra.
Yes. Yes. You know what? I was so moved to build this because I just thought it was so beautiful. I was really, and that's just something that I really, it's really important to me, like how beautiful something is. And when I read NBC, I was just so moved. I was like, oh my gosh, I just want to pay tribute to this man's work because it's so beautiful. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. When I
Yeah.
first heard it, I was so stunned that, and I was like, I want this skill set,
Yes.
so bad because I needed it.
Yes.
And
Yes. How long did it take you to get quite used to it and fluent to use it without thinking about it?
well, I mean, I still think if I'm triggered, right, it's still hard to use it.
Yes.
I would say though,
Yeah.
it took me like a couple months to understand it, right? With
Mhm.
when I'm not interacting, but it took me like to understand it to where I was teaching my family and friends because
Mhm.
I understood the principles.
Yeah.
But then it was like a couple of years for me to really be able to implement it skillfully when I
Yeah.
needed. Because I would just
Yeah.
forget. I would get triggered. I'll forget all about NVC, go into my old patterns, and then later I'd be like, I didn't even think about NVC. And the whole argument, it's like, how's that possible? Um, but now, I really that's why I started teaching it more and doing the practice groups because I wanted it to stay present in me. And that's
Yes.
really helped me to to just like now if I get triggered, I kind of automatically remember NVC and I just switch into like, okay, yeah, just
Mhm.
be very careful with your words. And it's a feeling too. That's
Yeah.
what I realized. It's a feeling. And the feeling that I avoid now is that feeling of like, aggression pointing towards somebody. And
Yeah.
instead of that, it's always just like the feeling now is just like awareness and being very specific with what I want and how to phrase things, but still also being like really, really authentic. So just that feeling of it's me, it's not you, it's me. However, this is what I would prefer. And it really does go so far. But yeah, it took me a while to be able to do that while triggered.
Absolutely. The while triggered is like everything that just makes
Yeah.
like 100% difference. It's a whole nother thing to do it while triggered,
Yes.
completely. And yeah, what you said is just the thing about NVC is it gives us a framework for approaching it from the inside. It's not just words from the outside. Like sometimes people say, well, is it just words? I do a training workshop, people say, isn't just things beyond words matter, nonverbal matters. And yes, of course, those things matter, but this framework allows us to access that, self frame where we're coming from what care and what's important and what's essential and moving away from blame and judgment so that we do have the frame inside that's generous and compassionate and I always say it's teaching us to speak not just with empathy but in a way that will invite others to be empathic to us. So that invites compassion, not just giving compassion, right? Because it needs two ways. It's like you want people to see that, you have things that are important that you're trying to go after, not that you're just, attacking and being, whatever it is in that situation.
Yeah,
So
I find that in my students a lot of times when they've learned, if they've practiced and they've learned, they sometimes will fall into that role or thinking they have to of just giving empathy to the other person. But that's not that's not how it's needs to be.
no,
You definitely do that in the beginning if they're triggered,
yes.
but you don't, if you do proper NVC, then it'll still always be coming back to you because you're still having requests and you're still
Yes.
bringing up how you feel. But if you're
Yeah, your
constantly
needs.
just placating, you may think you're doing NVC, but you're not. And I think that's one of the
No.
common missteps that
Oh,
happen.
interesting. Yeah, interesting. I've taught it in the context of assertiveness workshops. I mean, it's absolutely like very, synonymous with being assertive you're not being a pushover, you're not like pushing over others.
Yeah.
You're being, confidently assertive.
Yeah.
It
And which
really sees
means
that.
specific. That's what I've also
Yes.
noticed too.
Yes.
People really it's funny. It's so humans are so like it's so fascinating how we do like the exact opposite of to get the results we want.
I know. Yes, exactly. Like Marshall Rosenberg says, the tragic cry for an unmet need or tragic expression, right? He says tragic expression. Oh, I know it is. We just do the opposite thing to get what we want. It's so sad all the time, all over the place.
Like when you're having a challenging, like when someone's really doing NVC and they're really trying, I'll notice they don't want to be specific in their request, but like that's the only thing that works. And the reason why we don't want to be specific a lot of times is because it's like being assertive. It's kind of drawing a line. So now you can get rejected. If you're vague, we kind of know that you can like, kind of agree. Fine. Oh, sure, yeah, kind of. I don't know what that is, but neither do you. So yeah. But if you're like specific, now they can say no, and it's a little scary, but like that's the only way it gets done. And it's just interesting that's like the block a lot of times is this specificity. I've noticed too, like especially when you're doing emergency empathy with like a teen, right? Teens are really hard. You're like, what's wrong? Like blah blah blah. And you're like, are you upset because of the basketball game you were at yesterday when you lost the game and you didn't hit the winning shot? Like, and that might not be it. But since you were so specific, it's like you get specific feedback as opposed to like, are you upset because something happened at school? Like, then you're not going to get specific feedback.
So this is when you're actually trying to even figure out what's happening. Your guesses are specific because Marshall does he talk about specific guesses. He talks about guessing the feelings and needs, but the requests, right? Requests. But it sounds like you've actually even like expanded that very usefully, I think, to not just requests being specific, but the guesses of what's going on inside.
To emergency empathy. Exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Because then it just actually gives them an example to think, is it that specific thing? No, but now they're thinking very specifically about what could be the hypothesis.
Yes, you've started specificity and they respond in specificity. And it's really like, it's really helpful.
That's really interesting. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I do think it's so important to be specific and clear about these invisible experiences we have. Psychology is so uh I don't know, people we skate over it, we can ignore it, we can even just not even be aware of it, and actually putting very specific words. And there's so much research behind this too. Using the specific words really clarifies and helps us move on from the current place we might be stuck at.
Yeah,
It's an important portal for processing situations and learning from them and growing from them.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty
That's
amazing.
great.
That's I can imagine. So what level would you say the diplomacy dojo is at? Is it beta or is it like ready to go? Do you have like a whole roadmap of all these different places that it can go, or like what stage is it in as far
Yeah,
as?
I mean, so it's totally usable. I use it in the context of training. So my original idea for it was just to use it to help people continue training, because you can't learn something like this from a one-off session, as you well know.
Yes.
Like I give workshops, and immediately afterwards, people are like, "Oh, that person was so aggressive," and they're this, and they're judging everyone all over the place when they're doing their session afterwards, after the training. And so the idea is to just help them continue learning over time, which is that whole thing. Like, you need a few days, you need to sleep, you need to get feedback in a live situation, you need to have a difficult conversation come up where you're actually using it to prep for the conversation, and you have this like integration over real life, and to have it embed that learning. So it's ready to use for that. And simultaneously there's like a very big roadmap for all the additional things that we can build. Yeah.
I can imagine like a couple who wants to start using NVC and they know they're about to have an intense situation. So they just push record the whole thing, then they
Mm.
send it off to your thing, and then they analyze the whole conversation, and they can look back on it. Maybe not in the
Yes.
real time, but they can look back and be like, "Oh, I did. Oh, that was pretty
I think
interesting."
they could. They probably could. I mean, I don't know. It's not in theory, I think it
Oh
would actually
yeah,
work. Yeah.
yeah, a little bit of like a little judgment, and it would
Yeah,
be
yeah. Just be a
impartial.
long scroll on the website. Yeah, exactly. Really long scroll. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. That could be, I could see that being very helpful. Like a necessary stage in the growth, especially when you have a couple. Like if they both
Mm.
are
Yeah. Yeah.
intent on doing it.
If I
Yeah.
just add to that, I think it's the technology is already there. It can actually give real-time feedback as an NVC mediator. So that the voice recognition is wonderful enough, and the CPU power is good enough. So if a couple is arguing for like 10 minutes and then pauses and press the button and as it analyze everything, it can potentially match the guess the feelings and needs fairly accurately, very accurately using
Oh, you're saying go even farther. I was thinking of analyzing the conversation, but you're saying it could start doing emergency empathy.
exactly. It can give emergency empathy. It can be
Wow.
a mediator because it can guess the feelings and needs. And the way AI is going, it will eventually be more wonderful than Marshall, because Marshall's work has been expanded upon in the last decade, many years. So we can combine the latest science findings and all the other great teachers of nonviolence communication,
Wow.
and we can, yeah, how wonderful it is if instead of like an Amazon Echo, that can give you emergency empathy. How cool is that?
I guess that's where it's going to go, right? I mean, that's as humans and technology, it's like it goes where we want it to go,
Yeah.
and that's where I would want it. Just like, yeah, this is basically a counselor, an AI counselor, ready to do emergency empathy, ready to tell you when you're being judged. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to clarify, the current version doesn't give the emergency empathy, but absolutely, I think the technology is well there for it to be able to. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it
Yeah.
really could, huh? That's
Yeah. Yeah.
that will be
Absolutely.
so. That will be, I think, a quantum leap breakthrough for psychology and humans, because emergency empathy to me is the most powerful part of it. Like the
Yeah.
NVC is amazing for being clear and finding solutions, but the problem is when we're triggered, and we can't even hear any of this NVC or any logic. That doesn't even matter. You can be the perfect NVC. If I'm triggered or the other person's triggered, it doesn't matter. None of that works. So, and then emergency empathy just makes you feel heard and understood, and you get calmed down. And now we can, now it's like, now we can be human again. Because when we're triggered, it's kind of strange how, we turn into very unpleasant beings.
Yeah.
All of us, that
Absolutely.
I've ever seen.
Absolutely. I actually did give that in my training sessions. There's a large body of neuroscience and psychology research where they image the threat centers on our brain, which is the exact same centers that when we have physical pain or we're in danger from a snake, it's the same like neural networks, and that gets activated also when we experience social threat. So social threat and physical threat are very, very like overlapping, almost the same brain parts. And they show examples of people activating their social threat by showing them really threatening, hostile faces. And so then you see their threat centers go up. And then in another condition, they show just like strangers hugging and giving care, and people, taking care of each other, just stranger photos. They don't say anything. They just show that first. And then they show the hostile photos. And then people's like danger centers of the brain don't activate, like barely at all. So it's so protective. Just all these things we can do to show care, empathy, have a huge impact on the state that we're in, which then affects, how we can respond and how receptive we are to what's going on. And also even our ability to think, like lots of studies showing that our
Yes.
ability to receive empathy, identify our feelings and needs, link ourselves to core values and our sense of meaning in difficult situations. Once we're able to do that, the threat activation goes down, and then people are able to solve more problems and have more creative solutions. Yeah, so it's so real and it's so physical, like it's in our biology that right now we're in like emergency state, and we just need to put out the fire. I have this image also of trying to talk to someone when they're triggered or you're triggered is like talking to them while they have a fire in their living room, and like they're just trying to put that out. And if you're using judgments, you're like throwing, I don't know, grenades into their living room and hoping that they're going to listen to you and not be like worried about
Yeah, or
their burning
logic.
out.
You're like, hey, no, let me explain the logic. Here's what I
Yes,
said, and there's a
yes.
fire burning. It's like, I can't hear your logic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great analogy.
Exactly.
That's exactly how it
Exactly.
is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All they
Do
can
you
perceive are threats. Because it's a
Yes,
threat. I'm a threat. It's the only thing I can hear is if anything that you say is a threat to me, and that's what I'll respond to. And
yes, yes, you're on hypervigilance toward threat, and your brain is on that setting. Yeah. And we're completely different people when we're in different states. I mean,
yeah.
what we hear, what we're capable of responding to, our immediate reactions are completely different depending on how we're feeling.
Wow. So the day that AI can do emergency empathy, that's because a lot of times, something happens and it's not the right time or the right moment, or we can't think of enough to do NVC in this moment. Maybe it's a coworker say something in passing, or it's your boss, and now you're left with all this like turmoil. It's running through your head. And I do recommend doing NVC in yourself, but that can be a little challenging. But if you had like AI, you can just like, okay, this is what just happened. And the
Yeah.
AI was like, are you this because of this? Like, that would really be amazing. I'm excited.
Yeah.
This is what a great start. What a great tool for humanity. Because I know I'm leaping ahead, and you said it's not there yet, but that's obviously where it's gonna go, right? That's where it has to go.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. 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 Do you find I found it really interesting what you mentioned about the specific guesses when giving emergency empathy. And so you find that goes a lot further than just what Marshall Rosenberg initially suggests, which is just feelings and needs guesses, to actually have specific
Yeah,
interpretations. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's a process. I feel like doing emergency empathy is usually a process. You usually do not nail it on the very first try, right? So I think on the first try, it's okay just to be not so super specific and
Hmm.
see what's going on. But then as you're like that feeling of like, okay, I'm gonna be calm even if I'm triggered, and they're know I'm doing something. They know it's, you know what I mean. They when you're doing it in the real world, they kind of know at
Yeah.
least a little bit. But and so that's when it's really precarious for a few moments,
Yeah.
when they're kind of aware that you're doing something, and you're going to do it anyway, and you're speaking slower. So that's when it's like, okay, if you repeat yourself in like a pattern, they're gonna be like, what are you doing? And if you're too vague, it gets boring because it's like, yeah. But if you're like specific, it just cuts through everything because their
Yeah.
brain can latch onto it. And then they
Yeah.
go, and then if it's wrong, they want to correct you because they know exactly what
Yes.
you meant. But if you're vague and they don't really know what you mean, they don't really know if you're wrong or right, but they don't trust that you really care. And you know, it's like, I don't know what's going on. Just stop, go, you know, or they'll talk about, or they'll like respond in a way that's not even the question you asked. But if you're specific, it makes so many things happen at once. They know what you're talking about. They want to reply. That your specificity brings more specificity. So now you understand more, and it's like a cheat code to really just cutting through what it could be a half an hour conversation to like 5 minutes and really.
Yeah. I know it does definitely just cut through to what's important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're saying is you're kind of very specific about describing what led to the unmet need. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if someone's not talking and it's okay, you're like, hey, I noticed you haven't said much in this car drive for the past 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Is something bothering you? So that's pretty vague, right? And they're like, no, nothing's bothering me. And you're like, okay, you know there's something bothering them. So then you go, okay, are you feeling frustrated because I didn't stop at that gas station when you asked because they're the only ones that have the candy bar that you like?
Right.
Boom. That's specific. and they're gonna respond. You know what I mean? It's just like it's utilizing human nature. You were so specific, I have to answer that. That'd be hard to ignore. Right?
No, it was the soft drink that I wanted. That's
I want
why.
the soft drink. That's not the candy bar. Oh, okay.
I would love to share my experience on emergency empathy. I'm
Absolutely.
absolutely in love with that episode or a couple of episodes, and I want to promote your work. And then I've bought 50 plus copies of the book that you have, The Art of Nonviolent Communication. It's a nice plug for it. But in my experience, it can actually backfire. In a few occasions, when I make a very specific guess, and some people were triggered. It's like, why don't you just ask me? Why are you making so many assumptions? So sort of my next iteration of it is to pad it with alternative. So back to your example of you upset because your team lost 3-1 yesterday, and then add some padding of, or is it because of the because we couldn't buy hash brown in the canteen this morning or something else? Or am I completely off? Kind of pad it a little bit so that to give the other to soften it. It works very well for me. We can be both specific and vague at the same time in the same sentence just by adding a little or. And with that padding, that seems to have dramatically decreased the number of people who were triggered by my very specific guess.
Interesting. I never really tried that. I could see how it could work. I guess as long as you're doing, whenever I'm teaching students, a lot of times I tell them to not add things because things can easily get confusing and people get lost. And then they respond and you're like, I'm not sure if you're responding to the first thing I said, the second thing, or the third thing. But if you're it depends on how you do it, right? And if it's working for you, then do
actually,
it.
I'll just correct what I said. I'll just modify what I said and actually just add the word or something else.
Yeah, I think that's yeah.
Was it because your team lost 3-0 yesterday or something else? This or something else seems to have done the trick. I don't know the psychological reason behind it, but it's worked very well in my experience.
Yeah, that means that people are included, right? Because if I see a multiple choice test, I'm like, no, there's none of the answers are me, you know, but then it has other. It's like, oh, there's me. I'm included now, right? So I think it could have that effect, depending on how close your guess is, right?
So you can meet the needs for inclusion. Yay.
It depends how close the guest is, and also, you know, how close I think you are as people, and how much they have might have a feeling that if you have a history of, potentially like having guesses that are far off, then all these contexts could affect how sensitive someone is. I mean, a wrong guess in theory, I can see how that could be triggering, like a really wildly off guess, right? It's just giving someone a present that's so far from the opposite of what they would want. And you're like, what? You don't know me at all. How can you think that's why I'm upset? Right? It's
Well,
not,
someone getting triggered though is not is so if you're doing emergency empathy, right? They're in theory already triggered or very close to
yes,
it. You know, maybe not
yes,
overtly triggered, but we know when someone's triggered even if they're quiet.
yeah,
So, but we cannot control how they respond. So
no,
we know that we can't. No matter, we can say perfect anything and they can get triggered. So if you say something, if you do emergency empathy, I found it pretty rare when people get more triggered when you do emergency empathy, even if you're wrong, unless there's a judgment in there somewhere. You know what I
yes,
mean? Unless
yes,
it's the
yes,
judgment or there's some kind of, little dagger
yes,
subtly
yes,
in there.
true, yes,
When
yeah,
there's
yeah,
no
yeah, yeah,
daggers and no judgment, even if it's totally wrong. Like, are you upset because your girlfriend broke up with you yesterday? Dad, I don't have a girlfriend. You know what I mean? Maybe they'll get annoyed because like, you don't know that I don't have a girlfriend.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. That was your other best friend. Yeah.
I have a boyfriend. Oh, my bad,
Yeah.
son. I
Yeah,
guess I should pay more attention. So,
exactly.
but if they do get triggered, the thing is, that's new information that you just double
Yeah.
down and you do another immersive empathy using what they said.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so I
Yes.
would say, like, just for anybody's listening, it's just like never be scared of being wrong when doing emergency empathy. You're
Yeah.
gonna be
Yeah.
wrong most of the time because
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And the most important thing is to show care. Like I'm
yes,
here to guess because I want you to share and I want to be able to support you, not
yes,
because I'm pigeonholing you into my bad guess,
yeah. And I guess you're right though. If it's so far off that it's just like, are you upset because you lost the baseball game? I wasn't at a baseball game. I don't play baseball. What are you talking about? So it can't be like so far off that it doesn't
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
make sense. Yeah. But it is an art form. So Benson, like whatever's working for you, I would do that because we all have our own unique way, and it's
Yeah.
also different cultures and the people we're talking to and how we relate. So if it works, keep doing it as long as you're avoiding the cardinal sins of judgment or basically implying that the other person is bad or wrong. And anyway, I think that's the most important thing. Just be authentic and do not imply that they're bad or wrong. They're just
Yeah.
another human being being a human being, and you have different preferences, different desires. Totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are so many cultures, and I guess something else I also often encounter is just because one does perfect NVC is exactly what you're saying. There's no guarantee that someone won't be triggered.
Mhm.
I have a friend whose sister doesn't like it when she asks her how she's doing. Like she'll just, "What are you doing? Like you're trying to show off," or I don't know, something really extreme, right? And then
Mhm.
people have all sorts of responses to things that are not within, that's we can't control any of that. All we can do is our best to, you know not be judgmental, not convey blame, and as you say, just show our best intention
Yeah.
to listen.
And the beautiful thing about it is when someone's triggered, it truly is an opportunity to
Yeah.
build the deep connection because all of a sudden now what was closed and hidden is open, and now there's a
Exactly.
pathway all the way down to whatever the root core issue is. That
Yes. Yes.
yes, and now it can
Yes.
be healed.
Yes, yes, it's such an opportunity. It's such an
Yes.
opportunity, exactly, because otherwise you're skimming the surface. This is actually this like quote like difficult emergency situation is such an opportunity to be closer because in this dangerous situation, you have safely, been by their side and together like come back to safety and
Mhm.
together you've helped each other,
And
you've
that's a
helped them
bond.
be safe.
That's a real
Exactly.
bond. That's when friendships
Exactly.
get solidified. And if you
Yeah.
never do that, that's not a the like right when there's an issue and you don't talk about it as friends, that is the friendship becoming disconnected. But
Yeah.
if the friend erupts at you is wrong, you handle it. You're not a doormat, but you walk through the fire with them and then you heal it. That's a bond. That's like a beautiful bond.
Yes, exactly. And I have this like a slide in one of my talks where it's like at this opportunity, it's a juncture. When this inflammation happens or this difficult situation happens, there's just no like neutral road. You either going to handle it badly, it's going to make the relationship worse, or you handle it well and it's going to make the relationship stronger. You're
Yes.
really at a crossroads. Yeah.
Wow, that's true. Yeah, yeah, you're right. never going to be the same. Like,
Yeah,
after that.
exactly.
either
It's a
go-
choice point. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 That's awesome. So with Benson, how often do you get a chance to use NVC in your kind of daily life these days?
How often? Yeah, I'm obsessed, absolutely obsessed with it. It's sort of my how I want to dedicate my life.
Amazing.
Yeah, maybe is it okay to talk about my other NVC callings, missions?
Sure. Absolutely.
So yeah, on top of yeah, my blue sky thinking mission is to promote NVC to 1 billion people. I've got a clear roadmap. There are specific influences that I'm targeting. Is possible.
Mhm.
And then yeah, and then on top of kind of building on sort of this overarching mission goal of my life, is I'm also studying psychotherapy to become a trained psychotherapist in the UK system. And then I have already started my own theoretical work to start my own school of psychotherapy called Nonviolent Therapy. Actually, it is
Nice.
available now, nonviolenttherapy.com, to accelerate, because what I have found through my sound counseling psychotherapy training is we don't really need to go through some sort of childhood memories and spend sessions and sessions and do that just to enable a son to talk to a mother. For example, 3-4 weeks ago, after 90 minutes intervention of me with the mother and the son, they haven't spoken much at all in the last 24 months. After my one session with me for 90 minutes, they are now best friends-ish. And then they are talking to each other and they are sending, sort of asking for each other's situation and trying to help each other. And they are really, really um, on much friendlier term. So it can really help. And then in certain situations, well, just for this particular case, maybe my new hypothesis is that with some basic NVC mediation or training, that we can eliminate the time for psychotherapy by a lot, by 95% plus. But then to kind of integrate NVC back to counseling setting, I'm trying is I'm dedicating a few years of my life or maybe decades to come for it to be accepted. I'm starting in the London communities of counselors, and then I'm trying to promote it. Yeah, so this is also one of my biggest passion is to let the counseling mental health world have more NVC because it's so much more effective. And then the other mission of my life is the spirituality side. I really want to create the first NVC church. And I've found a way to marry NVC and Unitarian Universalism in the US and Unitarian UK in the UK. It's a very liberal Christian denomination which is very, very liberal. So I also want to become a trained minister so that I can start my own NVC church where I can marry people in the name of giraffes. That is happening. It will happen. I may have a tiny congregation with like 5 people at the beginning, but yeah, it will happen. So yeah, the church thing for spirituality, and then psychotherapy thing to dramatically change the landscape and the efficiency of mental health intervention, and the AI. I really wanted to take it to the next level. Imagine next time you receive some triggering text on WhatsApp, you click a button, maybe like an extra keyboard or something, you analyze, give you some emergency guesses, like, are you triggered?
Yeah.
Are you feeling triggered by this? And are you wanting more kindness? And then you can also switch into the emergency empathy guessing mode. Oh, just turn on the giraffe ears and through some AI analysis sub-seconds, and you can say, oh, actually, this the other person is a beautiful soul, beautiful giraffe, just having unmet needs of understanding or connection or whatever, then that can really help. So just imagine, like before we send an angry text on WhatsApp or an email, how wonderful it would be if you can get some feedback, say, these few words are not so rather disconnecting. So this is already is possible on Diplomacy Dojo / Message Helper. I have built Chrome extension, so you can just literally, highlight the text in the email that you're about to send and just get some feedback. And then, to that is possible. So yeah, it can really be integrated into every part of our daily life. What I want is that it to be integrated as part of our daily mobile experience. Then we can really live in giraffe consciousness where we are connecting with this living energy of need as a tribute to the late teacher of NVC. And this is sort of what and this is kind of taking to the next level. I believe there is a salvation through nonviolent communication where people can be really, really more connected to the living energy of needs. And I believe that it is one path to liberation. Also, another shout out to the book Path of Liberation by John, and I forgot his surname. Anyway, there's 26 scale, 26 factor scale. And so I believe it is also a path to enlightenment even. So it's something very dear to my heart. And I just want to dedicate every living second of my life to NVC in whatever way.
Wow, man, that is quite, it sounds very big, but when as I'm hearing it, it's plausible to me because the benefit to humanity would be so significant and practical. Like the feeling of arguing when you don't want to argue, like people, like we have love in our heart and we want to have like a loving conversation, and then we get into another argument. That is such a horrible feeling. And that's what happens when you don't have NVC. That's what happens like very commonly when you just don't know how to express yourself without judging and blaming, right? And it's not even like all these things. You could take NVC to NVC level. You can become a master, but if you just stop judging and blaming, in your words, like that will go so far. So, man,
Just kind of one
vision.
concrete examples, like some of the texts that I've received, they're really triggering. And so I'm actually training my own sort of AI model using various conversations in the main Rosenberg book. And then it kind of gives me some suggestion of how to apply to a text that I'm getting on WhatsApp or email. And it really helps. I can see that was definitely an opportunity to connect. Any situation of potential conflict is an opportunity to connect. And so I've used it quite a lot actually lately, using various libraries and both the code on Diplomacy Dojo and the various libraries. It really also take level up my life to the next level. And I can only see an upward trajectory.
Awesome.
And I want to bring this experience to everyone on this planet.
They want it. Everybody wants it. I've never met anybody who doesn't want it once they understand what it is. They don't want foo-foo, roundabout, vague, flowery language, but we all want practical ways to get along with other humans. You know what I mean? Everybody can benefit from that. So right now, if someone goes to diplomacydojo.com, can they use that helper, or is that link a little bit different?
It's app.diplomacydojo.com/message helper. Yeah, so it's under the app subdomain.
Oh, app subdomain. Okay, because when I went to I didn't see that. So I have to go app.diplomacydojo.com.
Yeah, /message helper.
/message helper. Okay, so I'll put that link in the description. Amazing. So as we sort of wrap this up, like what's your grand vision and for the world in AI.
I don't know how to compare to Benson's grand vision, my gosh, to the enlightenment and spirituality. Oh, I just love it if everyone could find more meaning in their life and their relationship, both to other people and to themselves, just by understanding themselves better. Yeah. And if that could be an easily accessible and ever-present skill and support that we can offer.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I'm thankful that you're doing this because, you know, AI is a little scary, but so's technology.
Yes.
So I've always been the type of like, we got to be realistic as humans. If we can think of it, we're going to do it. If somebody can think of it, somebody's doing it. So it's all happening. So what are we going to do? You better flow with it. And,
Yeah.
it's going to be some bad, some good, but this is obviously part of the good. But even this can be misused, right?
Yes.
You can definitely use it to manipulate or be disingenuous and pretend like you're a good person. That's just life. That's just light and dark of humanity.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the potential for good is so much. And I can see, like, to me, like, I've never thought about it doing emergency empathy, but now I'm like, wow, once you achieve that, like, really, and you must not be that far off because you're already like, I use it a bit. And it's like, it's pretty accurate. I was like doing good statements and it was like, good, and I was doing ones that are tricky. I was like, I feel as if it's like, try to be a little more descriptive, like, it was really, I was impressed with where it's at right now. And it could, so I have one of my services that I do hire is like, I'll coach people through when they write letters and stuff too. But now I'll just send them to the dojo because that's like, it's a great, it'll clean it up no matter what. It might not give you all the answers, but it's definitely going to clean up your language so that you're not doing you're not excessively triggering people when you don't need to. They may get triggered, but more likely or less likely a trigger.
Yes, less likely. You've done more of your best to make it less likely. Yeah. And I think really it's just the vision is like, can we use technology to help us be more human? Let technology take care of this like other stuff, like remembering what to say and remembering the better frame. It can remind us of how to be more human.
Yeah. Especially when we're triggered, because that's like our least
Exactly.
human moment.
Yeah, it's a challenging human.
More monster than human.
Yes, go to the computer who doesn't get triggered. Yeah.
And just I've one of my latest things is doing emergency empathy on myself because sometimes in work environments it's not appropriate to do, like, you can't be in a meeting and someone says something and it really makes you mad, but you're not going to do emergency empathy in front of the whole group. It's not gonna. It's not appropriate. So, but just to be able to do it on myself. Are you upset? Because for whatever reason, I calm down. I just, even as I can identify how I feel and why, and just to have a little helper, that would just be like pretty profound.
Yeah. No, that's the vision.
Awesome. Well, you guys, thank you so much. I'm, I feel like I'm an NVC nerd, but I'm not the only one.
No, we're definitely NVC nerds. Companion NVC nerds for sure.
I get some people bring it up, and I'm like, I start talking. I was like, all right, calm down.
Yes, don't bombard them with our nerdy.
Give a 15-minute answer. Did I answer your question? Like, yeah, dude.
I'll give my latest stories.
But so beautiful. If there's any help that I can, any way I can help you guys with this, just let me know. I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us on. It was so much fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, Benson, for the idea and facilitating and making it happen. I see you're like you're a take action guy, very organized. So I'm looking forward to the church and
That's one take it to the next level. It's not only human beings that I want to bring compassion to, it's all sentient beings. One day, I envision a world where we will even practice NVC emergency empathy with our cats, our dogs, and all living beings and all sentient beings. To me, that brings true liberation. And I believe, and I strongly believe that NVC is a very valid vehicle for that, for the liberation of all beings.
I love it. I love it.
That was my mini sermon.
Okay, wait. So you guys are both in the UK?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you teach workshops or anything in the UK that anybody should know about or anything like that?
I do teach workshops. Yeah, I teach workshops, and they can be anywhere. So it's because I do mostly webinar workshops anyways, so it doesn't have to be in the UK. Yeah, if
Okay.
anyone would like any webinar workshops, yes.
How do they
there's
find you?
AI
a
training.
webinar page on the on Diplomacy Dojo.
Yes, there's
Alright.
also a contact form. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Have a beautiful day. Happy NVC adventurers and AI enhancements.
Thank you. You too.
Thank
Thanks so much.
All right.